Hi, it's Katrina. October was a wild month for history. An ancient staircase in the jungles of Mexico just brought a powerful, forgotten Maya queen back to life. A drug test on a 2,500-year-old jar revealed that the Persian King Xerxes may have been an opium addict. And in Louisiana, hunter-gatherers moved 140,000 dump truckloads of dirt to build a monument because they thought the universe needed fixing. Get ready for 10 shocking archaeological discoveries that are rewriting the history of the ancient world. The Forgotten Queen. Long before the Spanish ever bushwhacked through the wilds of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, the city of Coba was already kitted out with pyramids, stone causeways, and the kind of drama only the Maya could script. Known as the City of Choppy Water, Coba was one of the great urban centers of the ancient world. And now, after centuries of silence, it has yielded a new name to history, one that I want you to pay very close attention to. The name is Ixcha'achchi'in. She is a 6th century queen whose identity has been swallowed by the jungle, erosion, and time. But erosion doesn't get the last word in my books. Scientists have rediscovered this queen, and it's been a pretty amazing journey. Starting in 2024, archaeologists from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History uncovered a damaged stone staircase now called the Foundation Rock. The staircase, one of probably millions in the Maya kingdom, is carved with 123 hieroglyphic panels. Someone scrawled all over this thing, but the graffiti was nearly unreadable. That is, until a team led by David Stewart and Octavio Esparza matched one of its glyphs to inscriptions on 2 nearby stelae. Suddenly, a face took shape from the fragments. Researchers realized the inscriptions were talking about a queen, one not previously known to the historical record. Her name was Ixcha'achchi'in. As for her titles and deeds, they are still being pieced together. But don't worry, archaeologists are on the case right now, still working to crack the inscriptions. The one thing they are sure of is that Ixcha'achchi'in was a powerful Mayan ruler, possibly the Cleopatra of ancient Mexico. While examining the glyphs, researchers noticed one of them correlates to a date, to approximately December 8th, 573. On or around this day, Ixcha'achchi'in is credited with the construction of a ball court, an act deeply tied to political authority in Maya culture, which means this woman wasn't just a queen, she was a queen who got stuff done. Female rulers in Maya history are famously scarce. Yet during the late Classic period of 550 to 830 AD, powerful women like the Red Queen of Palenque began carving out space in the patriarchal jungle. It's one of the great Mayan mysteries that scientists keep failing to solve. What happened that changed in their society to allow women to shove the men aside and rise to queenship? If you have any theories, please share them with me in the comments. Much about her reign remains a mystery, but thanks to a battered staircase and a few persistent scholars, her legacy is resurrected. The Great King's Drug Problem. Remember that guy in the movie 300 with all the piercings and the gold chains who was mean to Gerard Butler? His name was Xerxes, and he was the king of Persia. And now it turns out he may have had a slight drug problem in real life. Forget golden masks and gilded chariots. One of the most intriguing treasures from the ancient world is a jar. Yes, a jar. In a groundbreaking study, researchers have identified traces of opium inside an ultra-rare Egyptian alabaster jar bearing the name of Xerxes I, the famed Persian great king who ruled in the 5th century BC and was humiliated when he tried to invade Greece, fleeing back to Persia with his tail between his legs. The vase, held at the Yale Peabody Museum, isn't just any old relic. It's engraved in 4 ancient languages: Akkadian, Elamite, Persian, and Egyptian, making it the jar version of the Rosetta Stone. It's also one of fewer than 10 intact vessels of its kind known on Earth, so suffice it to say, it is rare. The jar, 2,500 years ago, was a kind of VIP accessory, likely carried by rulers or elite members of society, almost like their purse. And as it turns out, those rulers were packing more than perfume. Using gas chromatography mass spectrometry to basically sniff the jar for traces of chemicals, researchers discovered noscapine, morphine, thebaine, hydrocotarnine, and papaverine. If I mispronounce one of those, please don't throw anything at me. I'm not a doctor or a chemist, but based on my research, I do know that these are the biochemical telltale signs of opium, which means that Xerxes of Persia may have had the same problemita as the gentleman who lives in that bush down the street from you. It's the first time such a full spectrum analysis has been done on an inscribed alabaster jar, and the results leave little doubt. This wasn't a moisturizer, it was narcotic-grade swag. And considering rulers and elites carried these jars around with them, scientists are now suspecting this may have been a widespread problem. Essentially, these jars were luxury drug containers, the ancient equivalent of carrying your stash in a Fabergé egg, and the implications extend far beyond Xerxes. The study points out that alabaster vessels from Tutankhamun's tomb also contain sticky, dark brown residues with a pungent smell, eerily similar to dried opium latex. Given the new chemical analysis, it's not just possible but highly probable that Egypt's boy king was buried with a narcotic cabinet stocked for eternity, so Xerxes and King Tut were both chasing the dragon. And that means we might be staring down the barrel of an ancient epidemic, because other recent discoveries in sediment, a cemetery strictly for commoners, also revealed traces of opium. From king to squire, it seems that Egypt may have been a kingdom with a very relaxed central nervous system, if you're sniffling what I'm cooking. Just how many ancient kingdoms do you suppose were in the grip of a full-blown opium addiction? The ancient builders of Poverty Point. Some 3,500 years ago, in a stretch of flood-prone Louisiana, thousands of hunter-gatherers dragged untold tons of soil into towering ridges and geometric rings. They had no beasts of burden to help them, nor carts nor wagons, just human hands and a lot of motivation. Conservatively, they shifted the equivalent of 140,000 dump truck loads of dirt and did it without kings, whips, or a central command. You may have even seen the remnants of their work at a place called Poverty Point. But why did the ancient people move all of this dirt to make what amount to some fancy hills? Because according to new theories from archaeologist T.R. Kidder and his team at Washington University in St. Louis, they believed the universe needed fixing. And yes, I am aware that having the last name Kidder isn't the best way to be taken seriously, but I'm sure it's not the first time he's heard that. In two recent papers, Kidder, alongside Olivia Baumgartel and Seth Grooms, proposed a radical reinterpretation of Poverty Point. They don't think it was a city, which is how mainstream archaeology has labeled the site. They think it was a place for ceremonial reunions, like high school reunions, but with more shamans and chanting and less awkward encounters. Every few years or decades, people from across the Southeast and the Midwest may have convened at Poverty Point to trade, feast, worship, and leave offerings for the gods or the spirits. Just like how once a year you tolerate your family for a turkey feast and then flee. The vast earthworks were spiritual infrastructure, crafted cooperatively by egalitarian people seeking balance with forces they couldn't control. Scientists know people from all over visited because of the amazing things they have found. Poverty Point has yielded soapstone from Georgia, quartz from Arkansas, copper from the Great Lakes, and several thousand clay-fired cooking bowls. All of this hints at massive communal meals. But Poverty Point lacks what you'd expect from a capital city. There are no burials, no long-term housing, and no palaces or temples. It's honestly a little shocking that archaeologists ever thought it was a city when clearly it was a gathering place. The good news is that with modern scientific techniques now being applied to old digs like Poverty Point, old, outdated ideas are being replaced by more accurate ideas. Don't forget that for the first century of modern archaeology, the field was ruled by dudes with mustaches longer than my forearm who thought white people built everything. It's 2025 now, and archaeology is finally getting the unbiased revamp it needs. By reanalyzing shells, bones, and soil at Poverty Point, the dirt is now telling us new truths. What other sites in North America do you think need to desperately be reevaluated? Let me know in the comments. Digging up Rome. In England? At Bremenium Fort, nestled in the windswept wilds of High Rochester, archaeologists have been digging, scraping, and occasionally yelling with joy for the last 5 straight years. And finally, in 2025, they recovered a record-breaking haul of artifacts. Armed with trowels, clipboards, and an unshakable enthusiasm for ancient sewage systems, 47 volunteers and 24 Newcastle University archaeology students spent weeks this summer pulling Roman treasure from beneath the turf. Their efforts were rewarded with pottery, brooches, military gear, jewelry, and most recently, 2 exceptional intaglios. And let me quickly explain what an intaglio is, since many people don't know. In ancient times, lots of folk wore signet rings, especially the Romans. A signet ring typically came with a ring insert, which would be an intaglio. An intaglio is basically a small gem carved with an image that was inserted into the blank spot on a ring. One of the most jaw-dropping finds came courtesy of volunteer Barry Mead, who unearthed this rare red intaglio on day 1, image courtesy of Elaine Valak, which is either beginner's luck or proof that Barry is some sort of time-traveling Roman with unfinished business, which honestly sounds like a great premise for a new show. The gem features 2 cupids harvesting grapes from a tree while a vaguely smug-looking goat creature lurks nearby. Experts believe the image has a Mediterranean origin, likely coming from Dalmatia or northern Italy, which makes sense. If you're going to commission a custom ring with grape-stealing cherubs, it's probably going to come from somewhere sunny with grapes and olives. Richard Carlton, who heads up the archaeology department at Birmingham, confirmed the intaglios are of exceptional quality, with no known British counterparts. No other artifacts like this have ever been found in the UK. Rome may have fallen, but its jewelry game remains undefeated. Beyond the ring inserts, the team uncovered amphora fragments, metalwork, a bronze lamp, and intact brooches. According to Bob Jackson of the Redesdale Archaeology Group, the finds provide fresh insight into Roman trade, craftsmanship, and daily life, which apparently included stylish accessories and no shortage of wine. Not so bad, huh? Unless you were a slave, of course. Ancient pathogens in the Cave of Dead Children. Some archaeological finds are dazzling golden masks. Others are mysterious lost cities. And then there's the desiccated feces of long-dead villagers, which I'm not even sure how to categorize. But don't scoff at fossilized waste. These ancient poops just flushed out a whole new layer of history from the underbelly of pre-Columbian Mexico. Buried in the dust of the ominously named Cave of the Dead Children, nestled in the Rio Zape Valley near Durango, a series of 1,300-year-old fecal samples has yielded a disturbing truth. Turns out life in the Loma San Gabriel culture came with a side of gut-wrenching illness. But before moving on to that, let me just confirm one thing. The Cave of the Dead Children is an absolutely real place. During excavations in the 1950s, archaeologists found more than a dozen children's skeletons here. Why? Because they were sacrificed. The Loma San Gabriel culture dabbled in child sacrifice, as well as small-scale agriculture. And now, thanks to a brand new study involving some serious molecular wizardry, experts know they were sick inside as well as outside. Led by Drew Capone of Indiana University and published in PLOS ONE, the new study subjected 10 defecation events to cutting-edge genetic scrutiny. Using polymerase chain reaction technology, researchers amplified ancient DNA trapped in the dried dung. And what they found was enough to make your stomach churn. Every single sample contained disease. And before you ask, no, it had nothing to do with the sacrifices. This is just a totally different piece of the puzzle, but adds to the overall grimness of life here. Everyone was either sick or sacrificed. The most popular parasite was blastocystis. Known for stirring gastrointestinal chaos, it and various strains of E. coli were identified in 70% of samples. Also making an appearance were pinworms, shigella, and giardia. So basically a microbial rogues gallery of nausea, diarrhea, and general digestive mayhem. The bottom line is that the preserved waste has proven that the Loma villagers were riddled with infections. They must have had terrible lives. Ever suffered from gastrointestinal issues? Waking up nauseous in the morning? Having to lay on the couch for hours because your guts just won't stop grumbling? Having the stomach flu now sucks. Imagine in the past. But the Loma villagers had it even worse. Scientists think their environment was a playground for pathogens thanks to contaminated soil, tainted water, and unwashed food. And to be clear, this isn't just a gross-out study. These feces are a public health gold mine. Think of them as ancient evidence that communities were already grappling with the consequences of dense living, agriculture, and poor waste management over 1,000 years ago. This is a trip backwards in time to when humans first started hanging out in cities and suddenly had to deal with the consequences of all of their mingling ailments. It was a cesspool of disease and infections. And there's a chance scientists are only scratching the surface. As co-author Joe Brown of UNC noted, many pathogens might have decayed beyond detectability. What remains is likely just the hardened residue of a much nastier microbial reality, which means they were even sicker than they seem. So, next time you complain about your tap water being yucky or you avoid a sketchy salad bar, just remember that ancient humans in Mexico dealt with true gut-destroying pathogens so that you could eat Taco Bell without ending up in a coffin. Göbekli Tepe Goes Domestic. Göbekli Tepe has long been hailed as the world's oldest cult center, the oldest temple complex ever built by human hands. And now this 12,000-year-old site in southeastern Turkey has just gotten a bit more cozy. For decades, the surface of Göbekli Tepe has baffled archaeologists with its towering T-shaped limestone pillars, stone enclosures, and headless anthropomorphic statues that somehow look like Halloween decorations. But now, thanks to a flurry of subsurface scanning, experts have evidence that the Neolithic humans of Turkey may not have just gathered at Göbekli Tepe for ceremonies, but they may have lived there too. A recent investigation has revealed traces of rectangular structures on the eastern and southern slopes of the mound. They appear to be early domestic dwellings, and that changes the game entirely. It's like starting off playing basketball and suddenly you're in a tennis match. If humans lived at Göbekli Tepe, that means it was a city, not just a vast temple. And you know what that means, right? This place is 12,000 years old. If it was a city, it means civilization predates Egypt by around 7,000 years. So what happened between the fall of Göbekli Tepe and the rise of Mesopotamia and the Nile? Something to think about for sure. This amazing breakthrough came after the careful removal of olive trees, which opened up the terrain for proper geomagnetic, LiDAR, and ground-penetrating radar surveys. What the team found under the surface would make any Neolithic zoning committee proud. There were rectangular floor plans, distinct from the site's more famous circular cult enclosures. These were most likely everyday living spaces, like the world's first houses. The technical muscle for the discovery came courtesy of Professor Barbara Horace and her Austrian team. They digitally mapped the newly found dwellings along with some larger, previously unseen building tucked beneath the surface. And these, my friends, aren't just glorified storage sheds. They point to permanent human occupation, suggestive of houses, civic buildings, shops, and everything else you'd expect in a city, Neolithic or otherwise. And as if that weren't enough, 2025's excavation season also gifted archaeologists with another dramatic flourish. They found a life-size human statue between enclosures B and D. With its defined head and torso, it joins the pantheon of Göbekli Tepe's eerie statues, like the life-size wild boar statue found in 2023. To this day, no one has any idea what the statues honored, represented, or warned against. Göbekli Tepe as a whole is one big mystery, and now it turns out the place has suburbs buried underneath the boar statues. What else is happening over there? The storm that destroyed an ancient Alaskan city. When Typhoon Halong barged into western Alaska in October, it didn't just knock over a few fences. It swallowed 60 feet of coastline like it was snacking on history. And tragically, one of the storm's main courses was Nunalek, a priceless archaeological site that once housed a thriving Yupik village from 1300 to 1650. If you've ever wondered what 1,000 years of cultural heritage looks like being dragged into the sea, Typhoon Halong just provided the answer. I'd like you to meet the people of Quinhagak, the nearby village that didn't sink. Rather than sit back and wring their hands while their heritage floated away like a paper boat down the gutter, Quinhagak's residents hit the beach, and not for sunbathing. Locals, some of whom have Yupik ancestry tied directly to this land, began combing the storm-blasted shoreline for any sign of their dislodged history. And wow, did they deliver! Over 1,000 cultural objects have been saved so far, including a full wooden mask with original paint still on it, which frankly has survived more weather than most of us ever will. Meanwhile, Rick Knecht, archaeologist and permafrost whisperer from the Anchorage Museum, estimates that as many as 100,000 artifacts may now be somewhere in the Bering Sea. Let that number sink in. Combs, woven mats, fishing gear, children's toys, ceremonial pieces, all ancient and all potentially floating off towards Siberia to be reeled in by Siberian fishermen. It's not like disaster is new for these folks. For over a decade, Knecht and the Quinhagak community have been battling the tag team forces of melting permafrost and coastal erosion. Every summer, they pull ancient wonders from the tundra before it all turns into mush. Their entire world is slowly thawing after centuries of being frozen, and the landscape has turned into a mud bog. The site of Nunalek, which means Old Village but should probably be changed to Wet Village, has been one of the richest prehistoric Yupik archaeological sites ever discovered. So rich, in fact, that archaeologists had already unearthed over 100,000 well-preserved objects before the storm even hit. And now, with Nunalek obliterated, the beachcombing efforts are more than artifact rescue. It's all about saving history. So here's to the storm chasers of Quinhagak. May their buckets be full, their boots dry, and their eyes sharp, because history doesn't always sit still. Sometimes you have to chase it down a beach at low tide. Ancient hunting traps. Turns out, if you squint hard enough at satellite data and have a PhD in archaeology, you can uncover just about anything. In this case, our PhD superstar, Dr. Adrian Ollanader of the University of Exeter, found ancient stone-engineered mega-traps dotting the slopes of northern Chile. And they just had to look at their computer screen. Using publicly available satellite imagery like the archaeological version of stalking someone on Google Earth, Ollanader scanned the Camarones River basin and uncovered 76 massive stone chacus. What the heck is a chacus? I'm glad you asked. It's a funnel-shaped hunting trap built centuries ago to corral and capture vicuña. What the heck is a vicuña? The wild and deceptively cute cousins of alpacas. Each chacu could stretch over 450 or 500 feet long, guiding panicked prey straight into a 6-foot deep pit with all the grace of a cartoon anvil drop. It was hunting with all the cheat codes activated. Why stalk your prey and aim your arrow when you can just herd animals into a pit and then pull them out at your leisure? Whoever figured out this little trick must have gotten a huge raise. Ollanader identified V-shaped antenna walls built into steep slopes with strategic positioning that would make a military tactician weep. While some animals were forced into pits, others were forced down paths which gradually narrowed until they ended up inside an enclosure. And apparently the ancient humans who built them were very hungry, because these things are everywhere. They have now been found built into hillsides, making use of natural land formations, and scattered like breadcrumbs across thousands of square miles of rugged highland. The discovery is cool in and of itself, showing how voracious hunters used prehistoric life hacks to gain easy meat. But the discovery of all these traps also changes the history books a little. Conventional wisdom and dusty old textbooks tell us the people of the Andes transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle to a farming lifestyle around 2000 BC, trading in their spears for shovels. But Ollanader found nearly 800 small settlements, many of them little more than a one-room shelter. While obviously not cities or even villages, the tiny settlements, which house perhaps 1 or 2 families at most, are scattered strategically near the chacus. So maybe they were used as outposts for seasonal hunts, or maybe they were looked after by caretakers. Who knows? What Ollanader's mapping shows is a sophisticated, mobile culture thriving in Chile as far back as 6000 BC. And while that sounds ancient, and indeed it is, it's still only halfway to Göbekli Tepe. This was a culture who treasured their hunting prowess and continued the hunt even when agriculture showed up to the party. These guys were multitaskers. They hunted wild vicuña, planted crops when it made sense, and built logistical outposts to maintain the system. The next step is dating the traps, since no one knows exactly how ancient they are. Some even think they could be from the days of the Inca, making them no more than 500 years old. Then again, Dr. Ollanader suspects they could be thousands of years old, possibly even the earliest examples of mega-trap systems in the Andes. Cool, right? But not as cool as what's coming up next. I want to take a break from dusty old rocks to look at some dusty old dinosaur bones. The dinosaur that came in from the cold. For decades, paleontologists waved off Nanotyrannus as a juvenile T-Rex. They thought it was nothing but a lanky, lightly built preteen version of the Dino King. Awkward, toothy, and waiting for a growth spurt that would never come. But in 2025, science finally called the bluff. A new blockbuster paper by Lindsay Zano and James Napoli flipped the Tyrannosaur family tree upside down. Nanotyrannus, it turns out, wasn't a phase. It wasn't a kid. It wasn't even a Tyrannosaurus. The creature's identity has been wrong all these years. Nanotyrannus was something else entirely, as in its own adult predator, with at least 2 distinct species. There was N. lancensis and the newly described N. lithaeus, both living side by side with T-Rex in the late Cretaceous. The smoking gun in the research was the now legendary dueling dinosaurs fossil. This thing is awesome. It's a pristine scene of prehistoric Bosch murder in which a Nanotyrannus and a Triceratops went down in mutual destruction. It's called the dueling dinosaurs fossil because somehow these 2 titans were preserved still locked in deadly combat. Analysis of the fossil showed the Nanotyrannus' bones bore the signs of maturity, so it wasn't a baby. No baby teeth, no growing pains, just a grown predator who couldn't quite finish his dinner. The implications of this revelation are brutal, and a lot of people are upset. For years, everyone thought Nanotyrannus was a juvenile T-Rex. As such, it became a major part of studies on T-Rex growth stages, behavior, and biomechanics. These studies, many built on Nanotyrannus fossils, are now officially junk science. All the scientists who put all their effort into studying the fossil, connecting the dots, spilling coffee on their lab coats, it was all for nothing. It was like realizing your cat is actually a hamster and your life is a sham. Both species of Nanotyrannus were hiding in plain sight for decades. N. lithaeus was also misidentified as an immature Rex, but rather than being involved in studies, it languished in museum drawers like a misfiled tax form, up until Zano and Napoli blew off the dust and rewrote the book. But what about the differences between a real Tyrannosaur and Nanotyrannus? Nano had longer fingers, bigger claws, a narrower snout, more teeth, different sinuses, and longer legs. So like a T-Rex, but with a bit more dexterity. Picture a dinosaurian cheetah with a murder bird's head and you're on the right track. It didn't stomp the ground like a T-Rex, but rather danced across the plains on its long legs. The changes aren't over yet, and there could be more academic agony incoming. Because according to the researchers, other tyrannosaurid fossils like Dryptosaurus and Appalachosaurus may also be misclassified Nanotyrannus. What's emerging is not just one lone teenage misfit, but a whole forgotten clade of fast, graceful predators lurking in the Cretaceous shadows. It really makes you wonder how many other dinosaurs have been misclassified and nobody knows. As for Zano and Napoli, they are bracing for backlash. They recognize that their study undermines a nearly uniform consensus across paleontology. But in the end, you can't argue with science, not even if it means redoing your homework. The Celtic Grave Without Honor. She was young, likely a teenager, buried face down, alone, and seemingly discarded in a pit with no offerings, no memorial, and no farewell. Her wrists may have been bound, her identity may have been stricken from the record. This girl's story has remained unknown until now, but it is not one for the faint of heart. You've been warned. In the rolling countryside of Dorset, England, archaeologists from Bournemouth University have unearthed what may be the latest in a disturbing pattern of Iron Age ritual killings by the Celtic Dorotriges tribe. Found during filming for Sandy Toksvig's Hidden Wonders, this latest skeleton adds to a growing dossier of women and girls who were buried face down in isolated graves, possibly after being sacrificed. Lead archaeologist Dr. Miles Russell said there is a sense that she was thrown in. Even 2,000 years later, looking at her grave gives you the overwhelming sense that this person was treated as a piece of actual trash. But why? What could a young girl have possibly done to receive such treatment? With no grave goods and the body crumpled in an undignified sprawl, the site lacks every marker of a ceremonial burial. The girl appears to have been dropped into an abandoned pit with her hands tied in front. And she wasn't alone. In 2024, another face-down teenage girl was discovered nearby. In 2010, a young woman was found in a similar posture with her throat slashed, and that's not even counting how many similar burials have been found but not connected to this larger grim pattern. And it doesn't account for how many bound and murdered girls might still be buried in the muck. So, are we dealing with an ancient serial killer? Or was this some strange aspect of the Dinosaurs? And while I'm asking questions, who were the Dinosaurs? I didn't know, so I had to look it up. The Dinosaurs were a specific group of Celtic people who lived during the Iron Age, one of many subsets of the larger Celtic culture. And like the other groups, they organized themselves along maternal lines. What this means is that clans were built through the mother, not the father. So the son isn't going to take over the family business or inherit the throne. The daughter is. Which makes this whole young girl sacrifice/murder debacle all the more jarring. Dr. Miles Russell has a theory. He thinks the sacrificed teens may have been outsiders. They may have been from other Celtic tribes and had no relation to the maternal line of whichever tribe they ended up with. And so, in a time of stress, when ritual was necessary, the outsiders drew the short straw. They were disposable and treated as such. But of course, that's just a theory. The truth is, no one knows what the girls were sacrificed for. Were they offerings to appease angry gods, scapegoats during tribal turmoil, victims of war or drought or political unrest? It's a huge question mark. The only thing Dr. Russell can say for certain is that these weren't burials of love. They were burials of fear, power, or perhaps desperation. You don't just dump a young girl into a pit like a discarded doll unless something in your society is seriously wrong. DNA analysis and isotopic studies on the two more recent discoveries will offer insights into what happened to these girls, what they ate, where they came from, what kinds of violence or diseases they had. Until then, they lie silent, their stories half whispered from the soil. When there's more info, you'll get it here on Origins Explained. Thanks for watching! What was your favorite discovery from October? And what are you looking forward to in November? Let me know in the comments, and thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I'll see you soon. Bye!